We barely got to see any scene from The Wizard of Oz recreated in Wicked for good because there are a lot of restrictions on even the most basic things, and you will be shocked to find out what these 11 copyrights are and how they changed everything for Wicked. The first shocking point on the list is that Wicked cannot show, name, or even hint at the ruby slippers. In the original Oz books by L. Frank Baum, Dorothy's magical shoes were silver, not ruby. MGM deliberately chose to change them to ruby red specifically for Technicolor, wanting them to pop against the yellow brick road. Then they went ahead and protected that ruby design, locking it down completely. This is precisely why you never see those iconic ruby slippers on screen in Wicked, even though they're central to the story. The Wicked team had to work around this massive restriction by using a silver shoe, which still makes sense since that's the original color from the novel. However, Wicked took another smart approach to referencing the ruby slippers, avoiding triggering the Wizard of Oz copyright when Glinda held the shoes during Popular. But you are yet to hear the last of it, as there are many more strange items under protection, and one in particular will send you rolling in laughter as we get to it soon. Crazily enough, MGM didn't just protect Dorothy's ruby slippers, they went deep by protecting her gingham blue dress, down to the pattern, the cut, the material, and even the specific shade of blue. Wicked can show Dorothy's outfit in silhouette, but they cannot recreate that exact gingham dress design. Every detail from the 1939 film was documented and trademarked, meaning the costume designers for Wicked had to imagine what Dorothy might wear without stepping anywhere near MGM's protected territory. That's why Dorothy's costume looks different, even her hairstyling. The legal documentation for this dress is extensive, covering everything from the number of checks per inch in the gingham pattern to the exact measurements of the puff sleeves. MGM's legal team in 1939 was thorough in ways that seem almost paranoid by today's standards. The Wicked costume team couldn't use the same neckline, match the sleeve length, or even get close to the shade of blue Judy Garland wore. This restriction extended to Dorothy's hair ribbons and her socks, forcing a complete reimagining of an icon, and one of the reasons Wicked couldn't display Dorothy confidently. But it gets even more hilarious down the line because even Glinda's massive glittering ball gown from the 1939 film is out of bounds. MGM owns the exact shape, the specific glitter style, the star wand design, and even her crown. Wicked's costume team had to design Glinda's look from scratch while making sure she still felt magical and her looks are appropriate for a good witch. The challenge was to create something that honored the original character without copying a single protected element of that famous dress, and somehow they pulled it off, giving us a Glinda who feels familiar yet completely original. The original Glinda dress from 1939 used a specific type of tool and a particular method of applying sparkles, both of which MGM documented and protected. The Wicked team had to analyze what made Glinda feel like Glinda without copying any protected visual elements, and the result was a completely different aesthetic that captured the same essential feeling. Many people looked forward to seeing a replay of the journey on the yellow brick road in Wicked, but that was impossible, as the brick pattern, color gradient, and specific layout of the yellow brick road from the 1939 film are all protected. Wicked could show a path, but not the exact curve, shape, or brick style from that movie. MGM documented every detail of how those bricks were laid out, how they spiraled through Munchkinland, and how the color shifted in different lighting. The Wicked production had to completely reimagine what the yellow brick road might look like while keeping it recognizable enough that audiences would know exactly what it represented. The 1939 film used a specific spiral pattern that began at a certain diameter and curved in a mathematically precise way. The bricks themselves had a specific size ratio and were arranged in a pattern documented extensively by MGM's set designers. Wicked's production designers had to create architectural plans showing how their yellow brick road differed from the protected version in every measurable dimension. Funnily enough, we are yet to get to the best part, as you won't believe that the flying monkeys also got the same treatment. MGM copyrighted the monkeys' facial structure, wing design, fur patterns, and costumes of the flying monkeys. This means Wicked had to create entirely new monkey designs that fit the story, but looked nothing like the versions most people picture when they think of Oz. The challenge here was making creatures that felt threatening and magical without borrowing any visual elements from the protected designs. And considering how iconic those original flying monkeys were, that's no small task. The 1939 flying monkeys wore specific vests with particular button arrangements, had wings with a specific feather pattern, and possessed facial features that the makeup department carefully documented. Wicked's creature designers had to start from scratch, imagining what flying monkeys might look like if the 1939 film had never existed. They experimented with different wing structures, various facial designs, and alternative costume concepts, all while making sure these creatures still felt like they belonged in the world of Oz. If you find that to be really surprising, it will interest you to know that even Dorothy herself comes with restrictions. Wicked isn't allowed to show Dorothy's face, use her exact look, recreate her voice, show her directly in iconic costumes, or replicate her mannerisms from the 1939 film. Basically, MGM copyrighted Judy Garland's entire performance and appearance as Dorothy. This is why when Dorothy appears in Wicked, she's always hidden, shown from behind, or kept in shadow. The legal team ensured that nothing in Dorothy's portrayal could be traced back to MGM's protected version. The Wizard of Oz documented her performance so thoroughly that recreating any aspect of it would constitute infringement. This meant Wicked couldn't cast someone who looked like young Judy Garland or choreograph movements that mimicked the original performance. Dorothy had to exist in the Wicked universe as almost a ghost, present but never fully visible, essential to the story, but kept carefully outside the boundaries of what MGM controlled. This restriction actually forced some interesting creative choices, making Dorothy more mysterious and less central to the narrative, which ultimately served Alphaba's story better. And that's not even the end, as the Emerald City you know from The Wizard of Oz is entirely protected. Wicked isn't allowed to use MGM's exact skyline shape, copy those tall spiral towers, recreate the glowing green floor pattern, use the same glittery light effects, or show the city's original interior layout. Every architectural detail from the 1939 film belongs to MGM. This forced the Wicked team to completely redesign one of Oz's most iconic locations while maintaining its magical feel. The production designers had to balance creating something visually stunning with ensuring every detail was legally distinct from the protected version. This restriction extended to small details like the shape of lampposts, the design of benches, and the pattern of cobblestones in the streets. Even Alphaba's shade of green comes with restrictions. Wicked isn't allowed to use MGM's exact copyrighted green formula, match the original shade guaranteed by the studio, copy the matte texture from the 1939 film, recreate the facial contour style, or replicate the same nose and cheekbone silhouette. The makeup team for Wicked had to develop an entirely new green that felt witchy and dramatic without matching the protected 1939 color. This is why Cynthia Erivo's Alphaba looks distinctly different from Margaret Hamilton's Wicked Witch, even though they're supposed to be the same character. MGM's makeup department in 1939 created a specific green formula with a distinct undertone. They also documented how the makeup was applied, where shadows were placed to emphasize facial features, and how the green interacted with the lighting on set. Wicked's makeup team had to experiment with dozens of green shades, testing each extensively to ensure it didn't match the protected color. Wicked couldn't use dwarf actors as Munchkins like it was in The Wizard of Oz because they were also out of bounds. Also, their whole style, including the original curled wigs and hairstyles, those bright round collars, costume shapes and patterns, makeup styles, and even the signature musical cues for the Munchkins, is copyrighted. Wicked had to create an entirely new vision of the citizens of Munchkinland without borrowing any visual elements from the protected designs. This is why the Munchkins in Wicked feel familiar, but look entirely different from the ones in the 1939 film. Even the way they moved and interacted became part of what MGM considered protected elements. Wicked's costume designers had to create hundreds of new styles for the Munchkins, while still making the Munchkins visually distinct from the other citizens of Oz. Glinda's bubble in the original seems outdated due to the limited VFX capabilities at the time, but it was also unavailable to Wicked. MGM protected the 1939 bubble shape, the exact shimmer and sparkle pattern, the sound effects from Glinda's entrance, the bubble's movement style, and even her iconic star-tipped wand from the film. Wicked cannot recreate any of these elements. This is why Glinda's magical entrances in Wicked always feel slightly different from what you remember. The creative team had to invent new ways for her to arrive that felt appropriately magical magical and good witch-like without stepping on MGM's trademarked bubble design. Interestingly, we saved the most hilarious part for last because even the trees are protected by copyright. Wicked isn't allowed to use any of the elements in the Wizard of Oz trees and forests. This means if there are threatening trees in Wicked's version of Oz, they have to look and behave entirely differently from the ones that threw apples at Dorothy in 1939. MGM literally copyrighted the forest lighting style, showing just how thoroughly they protected every element of their film.